Today's a beautiful sunny day, late August. Third crop hay probably should be made already, but the weather is not good for tomorrow and seems like kind of clouds and rain about every other day here lately. But this coming week sounds pretty good, so we're just going to hold off on all that and do something different. I'm going to carve something. I got hired to carve a piece for a guy, and it's a name. I've done a lot of names, and what I do, this is a chunk of white oak, is I split it open. Now the other half went to a different name here a few months back, but then I always have eventually somebody request something that I could use the second half for. So right now I'm debating which way things should be facing, and typically what happens with any piece like this, you always have a wider side of your log, which is usually near the bottom of the tree more, and then, you know, as it goes up it gets narrower. Now this name's got 12 letters, very common name in our area. A lot of families have it, and I roughly figure about a foot per letter depending on the width of the log. And so I'll mark it out the whole way that way, and then I do what I call the trace, and then I roughly trace the letters on and interlock all the letters so that, and then we have to think of structure because our grain runs this way. So as I'm cutting these letters and punching holes through where these letters have to be cut to appear as letters, you have to think of your structure of your piece. So this would probably end up either hanging from a deck or in somebody's landscaping in their yard. I guess it all depends on the room and where it fits and where you can see it, and all kinds of ideas. Probably later on put on some sort of finish, and usually I let the customer do that because frankly you're just basically barn brooming on some sort of oil or I like to use even sometimes marine varnish, but it gets expensive and then I have to charge more, and I don't really care for that part of it. So anyway, I'm gonna get started with this, and before the end of this day we're gonna see what we can come up with. So this carving will be a little over 12 feet long, which is quite long for a name, but I've done them longer. I've done them up to 22 feet where I made like a slogan or something, some sort of saying, or family trees, which you got different names kind of all combined, but there's all sorts of ideas. So, and sometimes what I do is I'll even put like I'll put a design in, maybe a star or some sort of something extra, but this name being quite long, I don't know if I should. So it gets to be too much. Some of the shorter names, I think it looks better. Okay, I got my trace, and that's just roughly, and then what I'm going to do is go through with my carving bar and draw like light lines before I start punching it through, because I'm still able to adjust a little. It's all about the look again. It doesn't really, the look and the structure, it doesn't really matter otherwise. So these kind of come pretty natural to me lately, but I try to get the letters so they almost interlock a little bit, and some letters are harder than others to make them look right. We're gonna have to go prep a couple saws here, and then we'll get at it. We're gonna put a new chain on. I can usually do maybe 2 carvings per chain. These later saws, you can't really, you know, in bars, you can't expect to get a lot of life out of these chains. If I sharpen them 4 or 5 times, they're kind of done. They don't stay sharp very long anymore after that. And again, I'm cutting around corners. I'm manipulating this bar to go places where you're not just making nice straight cuts like cutting branches or firewood. And I use these minis. They're skinny, very thin chain. It's a 3/8 chain, but it's very thin. You can kind of cut around a corner with it. Way more than your 3H stock bar stuff. So, but I love these 250s. They got a lot more power. And after cutting all day, sometimes I snap the chain. Which again, that's another reason to just switch it out, because it seems like I do just as much time maintaining the saw as I do cutting with it. And I think that goes with lots of equipment in today's world. If you want it to perform right, you have to be up on your maintenance. Be checking our air filter and take compressed air if you have to clean everything off. And anyway, we're gonna fuel up. And we use the high octane gasoline to mix with our 2-cycle. I mean, I don't believe it's good to put ethanol in these things. I think the older fuel, it didn't seem to matter as much. Like back in the 90s, I don't know if that was such a big issue, but I think if you're gonna do any kind of serious cutting at all, you wanna make sure you don't burn up your saw. And then my mini, or I shouldn't say mini, my carving bar, dime tip, 12-inch bar on a 180. And this here, I will do very little cutting with, but where I do cut, you know, I'm getting in a small place. You can see how the nose is. And dime tip is basically the size of a dime there. You can almost like draw with it. So you're not taking very much out. And you always want to have these on these type of bars. I've learned this kind of the hard way. You always want to have these loose. They don't fall off. You think they would. But it's so they don't get hot, because that tip is very small. The bigger the tip, the less, you know, you got more area to absorb that heat. Anyway, so this will get very hot if I snug it up like I would one like this. So I let it hang a little bit more. So I kind of noticed all the wood carvers do that too. And I think if they're not told it, then they learned it the hard way, that it creates so much heat, dulls your chain. So that's the trace. Not being kind of see it, but for instance, there's a P and an R, and I get this tail of the R to attach to the P. And then this comes out, that comes out. This, I don't know if I can get that all out, but I do. And then we got an O. There's just about every letter in the alphabet on this name, but I've done this name before. But they're always different because of the shape of the tree, shape of the log. So I call this the half log style, and I got what you call slab style. It's thinner, usually something somebody can handle or move easier. This is kind of a 2-3 person type stuff, almost bobcat stuff, but we're gonna get punching out this thing here. We suspend the log so it's off the ground maybe 8-10 inches. So when I plunge the bar through, I'm not hitting dirt, and I can see light coming through. And then compressed air to blow the sawdust off so you can see again where you're supposed to go with the saw. So now you can see how I punched them holes through. And then later on I'm gonna come through and I'm gonna round off all the edges with the saw. That gives it more definition. And it kind of makes the letters pop out more. To make some of these smaller holes, virtually you're just about putting all the wood in that hole into sawdust, just about all of it. When I get done here, there's way more sawdust than there's wood pieces. But so like here, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go right through. It's pretty thick. Usually on a slab style, I can get it through, so I get a little light coming through. I've done it where I tipped the log upside down and went from the backside, but it gets to be more difficult than it's worth. I think we end up messing things up because we're kind of like going in the dark there and trying to match up to this side. And you don't want to mess up this side. If you saw lines someplace else where they don't belong, it's fine. But I see right here I got something to straighten up a little bit right there.